Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Soul Call with Kelly B. I'm your host, Kelly Butchert, and I'm delighted to introduce you to today's amazing guest. So today I'm joined with another Scot, Lacey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for this conversation. Now, Lacey, I would love to share a bit about your bio so that all the listeners and viewers, either watching this on YouTube or catching the audio episode, can get a flavour of who you are, and then we'll delve deeper into the conversation. So, Lacey here is a remarkable individual whose journey from registered nurse to energy healer is nothing short of inspiring. Lacey began her professional life as a nurse in Australia, warmer climate than Scotland, dedicating herself to healthcare. However, after years of battling her own chronic illness, she found profound healing through natural and holistic therapies. This personal transformation sparked a passion that couldn't be ignored, leading her to reevaluate her long-held identity as a nurse. Despite the challenges of being the main breadwinner and the comforts of a stable career in nursing, Lacey felt compelled to follow a new path. And that's why I call this the soul call, Lacey, following the call of the soul. Her transition wasn't planned, they never usually are, when circumstances led her to choose body autonomy over her nursing career, and she was thrust into the unknown, quickly learning to navigate the waters of entrepreneurship to support herself and her family. Since taking that leap, Lacey has not looked back. She has brought her skills and knowledge back to Scotland. Hooray for us! Thank you. Where she now thrives as a Reiki Master and Teacher, an AromaTouch Practitioner, and a pioneering certified First Moon Circle Facilitator based in Dundee. In addition to her practice, Lacey dedicates time to volunteering at a menopause group in Angus and is soon to assist with another in Dundee. Her work doesn't stop there. As we've heard, she is deeply involved in hosting First Moon Circles, which are empowering events that educate and celebrate young girls aged 9 to 12 about menstruation, puberty, and self-care. These circles aim to heal cultural menstrual shame and provide a more comprehensive and inclusive understanding than what is typically offered in schools. And I can vouch for that, having worked in schools for many years. Lacey is currently the only certified First Moon Circle Facilitator in Scotland. Again, hooray, Lacey! And she is looking to expand these transformative circles across the country. Lacey's story is a powerful reminder of the resilience required to embrace change and have the courage to pursue one's true soul calling and the impact that one person can have on a community. Lacey, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. That was a lovely introduction.
It's your story, my darling. It's you that put that together, and I've just, added my little bit of how I read into your journey.
Yeah,
How incredible it has been.
it
So,
has.
yeah. So, where would you like to start, Lacey? Because I'm sure over the last few years, this has been a really profound and transformative journey for you. But I believe that everything in our lives has led us to these pivotal moments in our life, to these culminative moments or initiations, as I call them, where we are taken out of our comfort zone or pivoting from a path that we thought we were taking into something quite new and maybe adventurous and different, perhaps fraught with challenge. But if we go back in time, did you have in mind that you wanted to be a nurse? Was that always a long-held dream that you had? Why don't we start from
Yeah.
there at the beginning, or maybe before, wherever you feel is most appropriate to start your story?
I'll start at the beginning. So actually, I just need to correct you. So my story, I started nursing in Scotland, and then my skills took me over to Australia. So I spent 7 years in Australia and then came back. So I went straight into nursing from school. So 18-year-old, left school and went straight to university to do nursing. It's always been something I'd wanted to do. I actually wanted to be a midwife, but it was harder to get into. So I thought about doing nursing first and then midwifery. But once I was qualified as a nurse, I quite enjoyed that role. So I stayed in nursing and done nursing within the NHS for 9 years. But during my time, it wasn't far into my career before I was struck down with chronic illness. So I would have qualified as a nurse at 21 and I was struck down with chronic illness when I was 25. So not long into the career at all. And it was almost just like overnight. It wasn't like a slow lead up to chronic illness. It was almost just like started with like backache to the point where I couldn't walk. So I had to take time off work. And then that just snowballed from general backache to like chronic pain, neurological issues, chronic fatigue, and going through an array of tests, all different therapists during that time. So yeah, that was quite a challenging time. And when I was going through HR and things, and I wasn't seeing improvements in my health, their answer was, because I'd kind of asked, could I move to a lower impact area because I was in HDU at the time, so high dependency is quite a intense place to work. And they weren't willing to move me to the clinics or anything like that. And they kind of just says, well, if you can't get yourself better and back to work, you might need to retire from nursing. So that was quite scary. But then I sometimes think, was that where my soul call was like, I maybe should have took a hint then? But how it happened was I ended up falling pregnant with my daughter, and the pregnancy actually saved me. So a lot of people who have chronic illness will find through pregnancy they do get better. And for me, that's what happened. So I had the most amazing pregnancy, but unfortunately, the pain came back 2 weeks after birth, and I did have a really traumatic birth. So ended up from about, my daughter was maybe 2 months being medicated, and over the course of maybe a year or two, medications kept increasing. So it got me to a point where I was functioning, I looked like I was functioning, I was able to hold down my job after maternity leave, but there was very little time for joy, because before I'd done a stint of shifts, I would have to have I'd call it a rest day, and say I'd do 3 shifts and then I need a rest day. And then there'd maybe be one day that would be free, but I couldn't do a full day because I was so chronically ill. So it'd maybe need to be an afternoon out or a morning out. And that's kind of how my life was. And I'm making these big plans, like to go to Australia from about the time my daughter was 3 months old. I kind of wanted to go when I was pregnant, and I kept thinking maybe a better life will help my illness. Like that was always at the forefront of my mind. Go to a hotter climate, a nicer lifestyle is going to help get a better balance. I'm going to feel better, get some sunshine. So that was always the plans for a long time, and I'd worked towards that. Had to go back and do some extra learning, and all the things that you need, your skills assessment and things to get your visa to go over. And then when I went over, I ended up getting struck down with like a really bad flare up. So here's me thinking, in this beautiful country, oh, I'm gonna get better, and I get struck down. I do feel like I now know the triggers for what happened for my initial chronic illness, and I do feel like there was triggers around what happened there as well. But I was in this point where I've got no support around me. I've got my husband, I've got my daughter who is 4 years old, and I support the family. What am I going to do? And it was at that point that I felt I tried quite a few therapies, and you'd maybe get somewhere, but nothing would really stick. But I did do drastic changes at that time, where I'd done completely changed my diet. I'd done a lot of detoxing and cleansing, and I managed to get my life back. essentially I wasn't needing to think about rest days or anything like that anymore. I didn't need to second guess what I was doing, and I got off all my medication, I think in 2018. So I was able to manage life so much better, but it did become quite conflicting working within nursing and seeing some of the things that we were doing that it wasn't moving the needle. It was almost like we could pop a patch on that and that can potentially help for some time, but then you might end up getting side effects, or you might end up getting another chronic illness on the back of that. And I was thinking to myself, that could have been me. Like, I would have been on a lifetime of medication just to function. So it became quite conflicting. I did move to another area of nursing where I wasn't on the floor and sort of seeing it all the time. So I moved into research-based nursing, and I was a critical care research nurse, which was good. It was really interesting. Obviously opened my eyes to lots of different things as well. So I was doing that role, and 2020 hit, and I think 2020 was a pivotal point for everyone. For me, I was kind of aware of lots of stuff that had been happening medically, and that's why I was sort of feeling the pull away from that. But there was lots of other stuff that came to the forefront, I think. For me, I was getting more in tune with different things. It was like I was seeing lots of numbers and synchronicities, and it was those synchronicities that led me to go and do my Reiki training. And I'd never even had Reiki in my life. I didn't even know what it was. But I had this synchronicity with my Reiki master, and just crazy things that happened. Like, I'd be in the library with my daughter, and I'd seen a book that I thought was about angels. I thought, I'll go and get that book. I opened the book, and it's about a Reiki master, and she used to go into hospitals, into surgery. She had a 100% success rate of going into surgery with breast cancer patients. And like, the surgeons started to notice this. So when they had big cases, they would bring her in, and she would give Reiki to all the staff there and a client. And yeah, it was doing amazing. I thought, maybe this is a way that I could still be nursing, but also bringing in holistic healing into nursing. Because I would say they're a wee bit more open-minded there, as opposed to here. But yeah, as it happened, I'd done my Reiki 1 and 2 in 2020, and I was sort of just using it to heal me and my family. And then it wasn't until 2021, and I could feel my career was coming to an end through things that were happening over in Australia at the time. And it was like I just had this big feeling that I want to teach people to do this. And I'd done my master's training, and there was a couple of other things like how to attract clients energetically, and I had a reading as well. And it was just, I kind of went from having sort of 1 or 2 clients a month to like having 20 bookings. And it was at that time that my career came to an end anyway, and it was just like I hit the ground running. I just had to navigate how to run a business and promote it and all the social media stuff. And so I was doing that, as well as I'd done colon hydrotherapy as well. So I was receiving colon hydrotherapy. I found it really helpful. And over there, it's not regulated. So you could kind of go in and do like in-house training. Obviously, the money isn't as good as over here because it's not regulated, but at least it was more in a holistic field. So between doing my energy healing and doing the colon hydrotherapy, I felt more in alignment, which was really good. And then I started homeschooling my daughter as well. So because of what had happened over there and the circumstances, she was actually going through private education, which cost some money. Because my career had sort of abruptly ended, it was kind of, I needed to make a decision. And because what was happening through the school in there, it didn't really sit well with me what they were doing with the teachers. So the teachers were also being stood down like I was, because they chose body autonomy. And I felt like I can't hand over my money when, like, I probably could have scraped the money together, but it just didn't sit right with me. We didn't know where it was going to go. Like, at that point, like, I thought, is parents going to be ending up getting banned from school if they didn't have the pass, because we needed passes to get about places? And like, for me and my family, for 5 months, we weren't allowed to go anywhere because we didn't have a pass. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to take things into my own hands, because I waited for about 1.5 years, knowing intuitively that I was going to lose my job. I'm like, let's just pull her out of school and let's just see how we go. So I was homeschooling Lil, and I could see she was starting to develop. And so this is how the First Moon Circles came about. And again, it was synchronicity. My friend shared something on her feed about a First Moon Circle, and it was puberty and period education. And it was about an hour's drive from me. And I thought that's going to be so worth it, because it's going to be a better way to explain it as an outsider coming in. And then I was able to join the circle as well. So it was right up my street. And so as soon as I went to that training, I was like, I want to become a First Moon facilitator. It was just amazing. And I took my daughter when she was 9, which is, it sounds early, but like she ended up reaching menarche when she was just over 10, just after her 10th birthday. So I just found these events so powerful, and so empowering. And because I've had the experience of her starting early, having been to a circle first, and now having had her period for almost 2 years, I could see how much it's helped her journey compared to my own journey with my menstrual cycle and periods. So that's why I'm just so passionate about helping people. And then we're journeyed to come back here. So I think as soon as that happened with my job, I did want to come back, but my husband and daughter weren't keen. So that happened in 2021. And then we were citizens, so we got dual citizen. So we got our citizenship a few days after. And I was like, I could quite happily go home now. I'm a citizen. I could always come back, but they weren't keen. And of course, it was really difficult to travel at that time anyway. I made the decision that we were coming back for a holiday in 2022. I didn't tell my family. At the time when I booked, we weren't even allowed to leave Australia. We would have had to do 2 weeks quarantine coming back. And I just kept, you'll know yourself, Kelly, that inner guidance. And I kept double checking. Like, they're saying it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Just book. And I booked. I came home and surprised my family for a month. And we had the best time. But within a few days, my husband was like, I could move home. And I'm like, we've just spent lots of money coming back for a holiday. I was like, well, we need to go back anyway. We thought we'd make 2 years of it. But as it happened over in Australia, a bit like here, but I think more on over there, well, certainly where we were, there's no help. Like, so, for example, if you can't afford your rent, there's no social housing. You're kind of on your own. So we were seeing there was families living in parks in their cars, but people don't realise that because it all looks so much, you don't see that part of it. So what was happening was the cost of living was going up. Obviously, I'm just starting a new business. It's you're just starting to build that clientele up. And of course, going from me being the main breadwinner and earning quite good money over there as a nurse. And then my husband, he tried to go back into casual work. He was working as a PT, but he thought, I'll go back labour and I'll get extra money. But then, like, there would be projects starting and then stopping. It was just that last year, but I did ask for guidance. I says, please give me guidance of when I should be going home. And it just seemed like that last year was really showing us when to go home. And I remember the last straw was, I think it was about January 2023. And to make extra money, we started doing, and it didn't align with my husband. He's a PT. I'm doing colon hydrotherapy and Reiki. It didn't align with us. But to make extra money, to make ends meet, really, we started doing Uber Eats. So when I was a family, and there was, we had to get one more delivery, and it was quite late at night, and I had Lil in the car. And I remember we're trying to pray for this last one, because I think you'd get a $400 bonus or something. And so I turned to Graham before this delivery came, and I went, Graham, what are we actually doing here? This doesn't align with us. I says, I really, really think it's time that we go home. And I think at that point, he'd just lost another casual job that kind of says there's no work. And we got a notice to say that our rent was going to increase. I think it was by over $100 a week. I thought, no, we'll see this lease out. I think it's time to go home and just see what it's like. We'll do a year back home and just see. We're citizens. We could always come back but we've been back now for over a year and all's going well. We don't have any regrets. We're glad we're back home, and we're home country, and yeah, got our family around us.
Wow.
Sorry, I've just spilled everything out there.
What a journey. Oh my goodness, Lacey, what a journey. And there is so much in that story to unpack. Now, we're going to hear more about the the First Moon Circle
Yeah.
facilitator role that you have later on. But I would love to just unpick some of what you've shared with us already, because my goodness, to have the bravery first and foremost to move you and your family all the way around, you know, the other side of the world, so to speak, is such a courageous step anyway. And, you know, suffering as you were from chronic illness at the same time, to really start all over again when you're already established here. But there's such an important lesson there, isn't there, for, you know, others who are watching and listening, that we often think that if I do this in my life, you know, everything will change. So we can totally understand why you followed that dream of this may offer a healthier lifestyle, you know, having a better climate, different
Yeah.
work environment, conditions, etc. But that chronic illness, as you said, almost peaked, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. It
And
was.
yeah, and it would have done for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And
Yeah.
I truly believe that our body is never working against us. It may feel like it sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's just communicating to us what it needs. And when we think about energy medicine, your body was needing deep healing. And as you pointed out, you were seeing in your external environment, your work environment, wait a minute, we're not necessarily doing a good enough job in that respect, because we're offering maybe short-term measures,
Yeah.
maybe medications in a lot of cases, which is masking the problem. It's not getting to the root cause of any issues. And so that whole journey allowed you to go much, much deeper into looking at your chronic illness and the root causes. And so that led you to do your colon hydrotherapy, your
Yeah.
detoxing, really looking at the deeper healing that your body was pointing you in the correct direction that it was needing. Yeah, your
Yeah.
cells were needing that. So I love how, you know, you've reminded us that actually the answers are all in here. It's about going deeply within. It's not about we'll find the answers in another country
Yeah.
necessarily, or another person, or we have the power within us. And I love how you wove into your story there as well, that you really started to notice the divine signs and synchronicities, the angel numbers, the messages, the going to the library and thinking you were reading an angel book, but oh my
Yeah.
goodness, this is a sign for me again about Reiki.
Yeah.
Here it's coming again. And I love how you've not dismissed, but you've followed these signs, because a couple of times you mentioned that I asked for help, I asked for guidance.
Yeah.
Now, the answers sometimes come in a way that we wouldn't expect, or it may not be that we hear a voice. For some people, we do. And others, you know, the universe communicates in all different ways. So it can be a book. So I love how you have followed your journey and trusted that's all been part of the what I call the great remembrance. You know, our soul is always trying to get us to remember who we truly are as a soul, you know, our spirit selves. And not only just noticing, but then acting on those signs. So to hear how that all unfolded was just so beautiful to listen to, Lacey, you know, that then clearly you've gone and learned, you know, a lot about cleansing, detoxing, how to keep your body vital and energized, how to go and, you know, do colonic hydrotherapy, how to, you know, learn energy healing, which, you know, hearing about the incredible results that lady had, you know, and the, I have to say, you know, the doctors who were inviting her to come in, kudos
Yeah.
to them. That's unbelievable. It brought back to mind an experience that I had. You said that you'd also had a traumatic birth as well.
Yeah.
And I know what that is like. I've had 2 traumatic births too. And one of the emergency cesarean sections, I actually left my body. So I had what some people would consider to be an out-of-body experience.
I heard that too. Not in the section, but very similar in the labour room. I kind of went out of it because I had sepsis, and I felt like that. I felt like I was in the corner of the room looking down. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really love how you've brought that back, that memory back to me, because that's when we know there is so much more to us than this body. You know, energy is everything. And when I was having Emily, my uterus had ruptured, so I was bleeding out, and it was an emergency section, and my heart had stopped as well. And I didn't know this at the time. But what I do remember is asking for guidance, asking for help, and I called in Mother Mary. Now, I'm not religious, but I asked Mother Mary to come in as that frequency of the Divine Mother. And the next thing I remember was I was above my body and I was looking down at this scene below me, and it was quiet and still, really still. I was aware there was music playing, but nobody was speaking, or I couldn't hear the words that they were saying. I was just held in this frequency of peace and bliss. It was just beautiful. It was just love, pure love. And I remember being asked, do you want to come back or do you want to come home? And I took a minute to think. And then I heard my daughter cry because she didn't cry when she was brought out. She wasn't breathing. And I said, oh no, I've got to go back for my girls. I want to see my girls and to be with them. I'm not finished here. I've got work to do. And then I came back into my body. And I remember it was obviously a bit of a journey to heal, as you will know, if you've had a physical trauma like that, obviously the emotional trauma and everything. And I remember by this time I had trained in Reiki myself. And because I had lost so much blood, they wanted to give me a blood transfer. And I didn't want one. And they couldn't understand why I was resisting it. And I saw a nurse wheeling on the stand the bag of blood. And I said, I'm not having you, thank you. And I did this telepathically. I said, you know, that can go to someone else, but I'm going to manage this myself, because my higher self was telling me I didn't need it. And so she turned, I didn't orally communicate this to her, it was telepathically. And it was like she got distracted and she disappeared and the blood sat on the stand. And then another nurse came in. They had taken my blood pressure and it was very, very low, like extremely low. I couldn't even get out of bed unaided. And they had said to me that I was getting the blood transfusion. So, however, I asked another nurse that came in to pull my curtain round. And I remember I had an iPod at the time. Remember iPods?
Yeah.
And I put the music on, my Reiki music, and I gave myself an hour of Reiki. And I drank maybe a cup of water. They told me to drink lots of water, but I had about a cup, a small cup. They came back, and when the curtain got opened, the blood was gone. So somebody had moved the stand. And they came to check my blood pressure again, and it was perfectly normal. It's the most normal blood pressure reading I've ever had. Now, I normally have quite low blood pressure, but this was like spot on what it should be. And the doctor was called for, and he said, oh, the machine can't be working. And so they brought another blood pressure monitor and took my blood pressure again. And yes, it was absolutely normal. So they said, my goodness, those bloods have worked really quickly. I said, no, I didn't have any bloods. And they said, oh, you've been written up for bloods. I said, I promise you, not had any bloods,
Yeah.
I said, and I explained that they had brought them in. When the card went back, the bloods were gone. Somebody had taken them away. I said, I didn't actually want a blood transfusion. I said, I just didn't want it. So they said, well, how much water have you drank? And I said, oh, I have had lots. And they said, oh, really? Because that jug's still quite full. This is a bit of a mystery. And I said, well, if you really want to know, I've done some healing on myself. It's called Reiki. And I remember the doctor looking surprised and saying, what's that? I've never heard of that. And I started to explain, but he was too busy. You know, he was just like, okay, that's fine, that's fine. He was kind of dismissing it. He said, whatever you're doing, keep going, because that's amazing. So thank you for bringing that back to my conscious awareness again, because the power of energy healing changes lives. And so, you know, you went out to Australia thinking you had this plan of, you know, hopefully recovering from chronic illness, which you did, but not in the way you probably ever dreamt or planned. And this is where we have divine orchestration at play, which I love. So, but what's even more beautiful is these divine signs you were shown, you acted on them, you didn't dismiss them or ignore them.
Yeah.
So, for everybody watching and listening, take inspiration from Lacey's story that, you know, we like to think that we control and orchestrate everything in our life. Now, of course, we have divine will, but there is a grander plan. Our soul has a plan in place, and your soul, you know, in connection with source, God, goddess, whatever you work with, universal intelligence, the universe will come and meet you, and it will provide the perfect conditions for you to thrive and grow when you set out your intention to heal. When you set out your call to please give me guidance, your calls are always answered. Your prayers are always answered. You know, you're never ever left on your own. So the universe will come in and meet you, but may put conditions in place that were not maybe what you expected. So please, please, please take inspiration from Lacey's story, because it's amazing and it's brought you to fulfill a deeper purpose and to show that there is more than one way to heal the body.
Yeah.
And to work energetically with others, which is so, so incredible. I wonder if you've got, without obviously breaching client confidentiality or anything like that, Lacey, do you have any sort of stories or transformations or, you know, journeys that you've been on with clients that you've worked with because of energy healing, because of Reiki?
Yeah, absolutely. Even one that's quite recent was I'd not long moved back. So say this is maybe about a year ago, and I had a client coming to me and she'd been off her work. She was really struggling even to do the simple everyday tasks. Even I think the only thing she was managing is walking her dog, but she was really, really struggling. And she came to me and we done just the one session. Now I never give anyone a time frame of when to come back. I always just say, just see how you feel and come back. I says, I personally feel like my healings are really that powerful that it's not something they need to come back in weekly or anything like that. I do feel like they make a huge impact. Anyway, I think she got in touch and it was 3 months after. And she says, I don't know if I'm really feeling, but I'd love to come and see you anyway. I was like, look, come in and we'll do some Reiki. The change in this woman, you would not believe. She's like, Lacey, I'm back at work. I'm doing this. I've booked to go away. She says, it all just changed. She says, I just walked out your door and it was just like something had just changed. So it's things like that. And see, when you see an impact of it changing someone's whole trajectory from one appointment, and I always say this when I'm teaching Reiki, do not be surprised how quickly it could work with even one session of Reiki. Setting that intention with your client, like we were talking about, and really calling in help. but it's just amazing. Honestly, it surprises me every time. And I do a bit of a healing where I'll do my healing, like the most popular one. I'll do my healing before even a client comes, and you might be the same, Kelly. Like, I work a lot with, I think you work with crystals and things. I tend to work more with essential oils, and I'm always called to use an oil on a client before they're even there, but I never look at what the emotional meaning of it is. And so then I'll use that oil, we'll do the healing, I'll do their feedback, and then I do a mixture of tarot cards and some oracle cards. And how everything links together, you literally can't make it up. Like some of the things, because I tend to write everything down when I'm doing healings, and it'll be like even a few words or a sentence, and you look at the card meaning and what's written for the oracle card, and it matches up, and you're just like, you can't make it up. And so that's how I tend to work, is like I try and empower my clients to move themselves on, so that I'm not just like, you know how I was talking about industry and like being a patch for someone. I want to give them things to help them move on. So I might give them some exercises. I might give them some suggestions of oils that could help with different emotions and things to help them empower themselves. And that's why I'm passionate about teaching Reiki as well, because I feel like every child should be able to learn how to do energy healing on themselves.
Yeah.
It's made such a huge impact on me and my family. Like you say, just knowing to trust your guidance as well has made a huge, not second guessing.
Absolutely. And that is true body autonomy and body sovereignty, so that
Yeah.
people are taking their power back and not being codependent on
Mm-hmm.
others to fix their problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's a place for allopathic care, there's a place for everything.
Uh-huh.
But as long as it's in healthy balance, would you agree that,
I
you
agree.
know, and I love how you're sharing that, you know, you empower clients by giving them some things to take away with. I do the same. I call them energy medicine prescriptions.
Yes.
You know, just like if you went to the doctor, you would get a
Yeah.
prescription. So I give clients energy medicine prescriptions, and it might be a crystal, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it might be a silent counselling technique to shift energy through,
Yeah.
to reduce the anxiety. It might be something like a toxin release.
Mm-hmm.
It might be an essential oil, because I work with essential
Yeah.
oil too. It might be positive affirmations. It might be
Yeah.
journaling prompts. So
Yeah.
it's giving the power back to others to, you know, to really lift themselves out of victimhood and to be the
Mm-hmm.
victor in their life again, which is just so beautiful. So I love that you are doing exactly the same, you know, for those beautiful souls that are attracted to come and work with you in your own unique way, which is so, so beautiful. But you're also very involved with other pursuits as well, which is also about educating and empowering young girls so that they also have bodily autonomy and that they have an understanding of what's happening to them on not just a physical level when, you know, you know, coming into their initiation of, you know, coming into adulthood, their maidenhood, if you like, yeah. So that
Yeah.
they're going through that big transition of, and I know, you know, I was very young when I had my menarche, you know, and it's not unusual for little ones, you know, 9 years old to start
Mm-hmm.
the menstrual cycle. So it's such a big thing. And having worked in education myself, in primary education for 22 years, I can see how we do not educate the whole child in that respect, because we don't talk about the emotional side of it, the mental side of it, not just the physical side, but also the spiritual side, you know, like everything that's going on and how it connects to you know, lunar cycles, it connects to the earth, Mother Nature, all of that. So I would love to hear more about the first moon circles. I believe that what you said is you're the only facilitator in Scotland, but this was something
Mm-hmm.
learned in Australia, is that right, Lacey?
Yeah, so I learned this in Australia. The creator is Charlotte Ponte, and she lives in Australia. She's English, and she felt a call for it. So she was asked just by, I think, people in her area, can you do this for our girls? And she started doing little circles herself, and then she saw the need for it on a grander scheme. So she started doing the training in 2020, and I believe it's 2 intakes a year that she does. And we now have First Moon Circles on all continents. And we do have a good handful of facilitators in the UK, but I believe so far I'm the only certified facilitator in Scotland, and there are some down in England. And yeah, it was just an amazing course. So I think I took Lil to her First Moon Circle in 2022. And then I started the training in September, and then I qualified in the January 2023. And I'd done one big circle in Australia before coming over here and bringing it back here. But they're beautiful events. They're 3-hour events. They can be adapted slightly, but they tend to have a familiar flow. So all facilitators have Charlotte's education, which she, asks us to sort of promote, but you could do your own wee take on it. And how they go is, so you see, if you look on my page, that it's such a beautiful setup. So compared to your traditional education, where you tend to be in a room, I think how they educate it now, Kelly, is boys and girls in the same room, and it's their teacher that teaches the sort of all the puberty education and menstrual cycle. I actually don't think they do menstrual cycle awareness at all, actually. I think it's just periods and puberty education for boys and girls in the same room with their own teacher. So there's no outsider coming in either. And so, they might not be comfortable asking the questions they want to ask. It's not in a nice, cozy environment. The way we try to make our circles is like the magical. I call them magical because the layout, and every facilitator is the same. I've never seen a setup that isn't so beautiful of our circles. We'll set up an altar, and we'll have, like, I use a lot of like lights and candles, and I have my essential oils, and there might be crystals and little cards and lots of snacks. So when they're coming in, they've probably never had that type of education before, where it's informal, but it's also just so beautiful. It's something they're going to remember for life. So we often will do like a nice icebreaker and get the girls comfortable. I have really nice, tasteful colouring in for them to do as well, because I know some children find it quite difficult to sit still. So I would make sure, you're comfortable, you can stand up, you could do this, there's lots of snacks, there's oils that you could just make it interactive for them, so they don't feel like they're just sitting down and like just having to sit there and not doing anything. So they tend to sit and colour in, and I've got like vulvas that are really tasteful, flowers and stuff, and I read them the Moon Goddess story. So that's a story that's in Jane Hardwicke Collins, which, if anyone's familiar, she's almost like the queen of all this stuff. She's done so much research into the history, the red tents, if anyone's aware of them, where the women used to go off and bleed together. So we read that story, and it really nicely sets the tone for it. A really nice introduction. And then we might ask, what do you already know? Some might know, some might not. I've had a mix of a lot of home educators come in, and a mix of that have went through the system and had some education through school. So we'll ask what they know, and then we kind of have a bit of anatomy and physiology. So we make it really interactive. So I've got like crocheted vulvas. We go through the proper names for everything, and just ask the girls if there's any questions, the changes that we can expect to go through puberty. And then we'll bring in period product play. So this one's always received so well, and it's something I don't think many schools do this. from what I've heard from girls who have come on Circle so far, and I asked them, so what did you get at school? A lot of them have just kind of said it was like a 2-minute video, and then it was, if you need to get any products, you'll find them in the bathrooms, but not actually opening the product, not seeing how much fluid the products will hold. The variety that we have at First Moon Circles is on a different scale. So we do show how many products there are. We're not expecting them to use them all, but we just give them, this is what the products are. And yeah, they just love. This is when the girls they start getting a bit more comfortable with each other, and they're having a bit of a laugh. So it's really good. And then we have sort of tea break, and I do obviously try and promote like earth-friendly products and organic products, and we try and encourage like healthier eating. So I'll make rainbow wraps, and the mums will have a nice cup of tea, and then they'll join us at that point. So whilst they're having tea, I'll just have an informal chat, and when the mums and caregivers are there, and we'll just say like, this is what we've learned so far, and the girls usually come down and they're so proud. They're like, oh, this is what we've learned. Like, it just opens that lines of communication, whereas before maybe they didn't know how to broach that subject. And I think that's where the First Moon Circles differ from doing this through school. So a lot of people have said, oh, Lacey, can you do this through school? And I have approached schools to see if I could do a version in school, but I do feel it would still be good to do a First Moon Circle, because it's breaking through the shame and trauma that might have been carried for lineage, like back the lineage. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we think about it, like the grandmother, like would have been in, like my daughter would have been in grandmother, you know, with the eggs already there. So it's breaking through that. You'll know with energy is carried forward as well. So I think it's still good to do a First Moon Circle as an addition. So then when we bring mothers in, we'll do the beading ritual, and that's when we'll sort of bring in menstrual cycle awareness. So we've kind of talked a bit about the different hormones, but we go more into what to expect through all 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, but not just the physical. We'll go through the mental, emotional, and spiritual changes that you could expect. And they'll be doing the beading ritual, so they actually make a nice bracelet with 28 beads on it, and each 7 beads is a different colour. And we kind of explain it like the inner seasons. That tends to be how to explain it, but there's different ways. But it seems to be easier because you could say to them, so how do you feel in the winter? And then they'll be like, oh, well, we just like to stay in, and we just like to maybe get a blanket or have a bath and have a cup of cocoa. And I'm like, so that's what we would say in our winter is like from day 1 to day 6 of your menstrual cycle, from the first day of your bleeding. So try and follow it like what you would do in the seasons. In the summer, you might be a bit more outgoing. So that's when you're sort of post-ovulation. So it's easier for them to relate in that way. So we kind of go through menstrual cycle awareness at that point. And what I was noticing is the mums didn't know about this. So I now run workshops and circles helping women understand their menstrual cycle
I
too.
was going to ask that, Lacey,
Yeah.
because, you know, a lot of women don't know this.
No,
They've never been taught.
no.
And you touched on a really important point there about there may be shame, you know, and so even if it's not your shame, you may carry shame that's gone back the lineages, like you
Yeah.
say. And so, you know, that was another important point that you made, that we are born with all our eggs. Females are
Yeah.
born with all their eggs inside of them. And so when you think about it, we were inside our grandmother's womb,
Grandmother. Yeah.
and DNA is passed through the lineages. You know, we are our ancestors.
Yeah.
And energy transfers. So all the good stuff transfers, but so does all the trauma, so does all the shame. And if there has ever been any trauma or shame experienced around menstruation or anything to do with women's health, you know, their sacred center, then if that has not been healed, that gets passed down.
Mm-hmm.
and it can be held subconsciously in the energy field. And so some mothers, even with the best of intentions, maybe don't know enough about the biology and the physiology themselves, or perhaps they're holding emotional shame
Mm-hmm.
that they maybe don't have a deep conscious awareness of. So they maybe don't know where to start with talking about the spiritual side of it all. They
Mm-hmm.
maybe don't know where to start with talking about how we're tuning into nature, because we are not separate to nature. We have been so conditioned to distance ourselves from nature over,
Yeah.
you know, many years, many generations, to do the 9 to 5, to,
Yep.
you know, just have a busy, distracted life. So you've touched on so many important points there that I love, that the mothers are wanting to have this education as well. And the fact that the mums come at the tea break and hear from their daughters what they have been learning, that's just so inspired as well, so that they're having that deeper connection and learning together about, the sacredness of all of this, the sacredness that women carry. Yeah, because we carry the creatress energy.
Yeah.
We create life, yeah. Obviously not of our own, it takes away
Yeah.
more than just the women, but we carry the power in our sacred wombs.
Yeah.
So I love that you are covering so much in these
Yeah.
circles. They're just incredible. So what is, you've spoken about schools and wanting to get into the schools. What is the vision for you next? Because I'm hoping that anybody watching and listening will be inspired to come along, be inspired to have conversations with their schools to say, do you know that about Lacey, who does
Yeah.
these moon circles,
Yeah.
First Moon Circles? You just don't know who's going to be watching and listening, who might think, actually, I want to look into this further. I want to contact Lacey about this. This sounds amazing. So what is the vision for you?
I think for me, I've sort of just changed it to where I was doing local circles, but I feel like I want to go further afield. So going across, like my dream always before I came back here was I'd love to get a camper, and I'd love to have an actual red tent, and I'd love to go across the country actually doing my circles in tents, like back in the day when they had the red tents. I just think that would be amazing. So that would be the bigger picture, I think, would be to be able to do that. But for the time being, it's just getting more reach where I'm perhaps going, like I've potentially been invited to go over to Ayrshire and do a circle there. So just trying to get out there and really get people to see the value. Another thing that I've not touched on, Kelly, and just because we've talked about traumatic births, is that eventually I'd love to be where we are celebrating this, and I do encourage mums to do that, celebrate it as a rite of passage like you would any other rite of passage. And we do know through research that when this rite of passage is celebrated, that the next rite of passages that will follow will be met with like less difficulties. So I feel like my big why as well is because I've had a traumatic birth. And I know getting in and empowering our girls early to understand their bodies and the power that it holds will help prevent birth trauma in the future. So I would love to be even a celebrant, like going in and helping families to actually have ceremonies that do celebrate this as a rite of passage. I think we're maybe a wee bit away off, but that would be my future. I would love to be doing that and helping in any way that I can. They do it in other cultures, where they will have all the women in the family coming round, and they'll have the daughter who's just reached menarche, and they'll have their crown on their head, and they might do like feet washing and stuff like that. I would just love that. But for the time being, it is just trying to get out, get the circles more well known. I've went into workplaces and done an adapted version of menstrual cycle awareness for with the workforce. I think that could be really helpful. And obviously I'm doing a lot of work with helping through another rite of passage, so menopause as well. So it really is just getting out and just helping empower people. That's my passion.
and it comes across in spades. You know, you can
Mhm.
just see how passionate you are about it, Lacey. I have learned so much in this conversation. I just think it's so inspiring and so synchronistic, so divinely orchestrated, this whole journey to bring you to this point where I just know that you are going to take this and go really, really big. And I love the fact that you've got that vision of a camper van, you know, and the
Yeah.
red tent. I spoke about 20 years ago about having Reiki buses, and I remember people in education just looking at me like I had, you know, two heads. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we did have services like this? It just takes one person to have the dream, to take the action, and there will be then that ripple effect where there will be others that follow. There will be others that want to step in and support. There'll be others that think, why have we not been doing this all along?
Yeah.
So it
Teaching our
is
children energy healing, teaching them about their bodies, like the stuff that gets
absolutely,
missed through the schools.
absolutely. And this is where education, which again, I'll not get my soapbox about it because I'll not stop. But you know, there have been certain agendas that have put systems in place. And I say this all the time, that doesn't mean to say that people who are working in the systems are bad or, you know, not going into it for the right reasons, but they have been set up from the outset with maybe not the best of intentions always. And there's certainly agendas behind what is taught in schools. And, you know, we'll not go into like where that's all heading just now because it just does not feel good. And it certainly didn't feel aligned with my heart, hence the reason I left. Um, and that was triggered in 2020, you know, I just
Yeah,
thought,
it's just, yeah.
what are we doing? So these systems are in place as they're not separate entities. They, the people that work in the systems need to change the systems.
Mhm.
But we can also do that hand in hand with those that have these creative ideas, who are following their soul's journey, who are following their intuition and the great remembrance of, you know, what our elders always knew. Yeah, the ways that are the ancient ways, the
Amazing.
ancient ways that we can take into modern times and bringing our children back to the soul of who they are. And
Mhm.
then, like you say, as they then walk their own journey, their rites of passage, they meet their own initiations, then they're healing as they go, so that then births should not be as traumatic as they once
Mhm.
were, so that life will not be as challenging as it once was, because we're healing the generational trauma, we're taking our power back, and we're serving ourselves and each other, which is so beautiful. I love, love, love your vision for all of this. I just think it's amazing the work that you're doing, Lacey. And it's been so wonderful to have you on
Oh,
to have you on talking about all of this today. Now, I know that you also volunteer in a menopause group as well. Do you want to just quickly mention that, and then we'll hear about where people can find you and get in touch with you?
yeah, so I volunteer with Her Story Scotland, which is Angus based, and I volunteer at a menopause group once a month in Arbroath at Reach Across. We're just in the process of setting up social media and things for that. So what had happened was we were working for a different company, but unfortunately they ceased trading. Um, and then we didn't know what to do. So this other company was sort of Scotland based, and but we'd made good connections, and they were getting into schools and being able to teach as well a menstrual cycle. That's kind of what drawn me to the company, was because this was again another synchronicity. You'll laugh at me, but I went to it was like a little charity concert, and they had stalls, and I heard somebody giving out free period products, and I went over and I was like, oh, and they had, it was like the inner seasons of the menstrual cycle. And I was like, wow, what's this? Like, this is what I teach. And then it turned out one of the volunteers there was like, I've saw your advertisement. you need to meet with my boss. And I was like, I'm going to get in touch. So that's how that all came about. But unfortunately, like that, as I say, that company ceased trading, and we didn't know. I didn't feel like it was over. And so the boss of the Angus based, she is bringing it back, just Angus based for now. So we're kind of in the process. So there isn't a social media where you'd be able to link, but if you just link to my socials, I often share, or just DM me, and I would be able to link you to where to come if you wanted to come. And that's just a free group that we do once a month, and it's a couple of hours that it's on for, and it's just nice to share. I do like to give something back, where it might be one piece of the puzzle that might help with one symptom of menopause. So I've done low tox living, I've done an essential oil workshop, we might do an energy healing soon. So just different things that might not help everyone, but if they could get little bits that might just help their symptoms.
Amazing. Well, keep doing the incredible work that you're doing, Lacey. I so honour you for showing up in your authenticity. You know, it's not easy to leave behind identities that we've worked our way to be, but at the same time it is. Because you're coming back to your deeper purpose. So thank you so much for coming on today. I'm going to drop all your social media links below this episode, and hopefully we'll connect again in the future, Lacey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kelly. It's been a pleasure being on.